From West Point to leading at the highest levels of the Army, today's guest learned leadership the hard way by realizing the model she was following wasn't her own. This conversation will challenge how you think about authenticity and performance in leadership. Welcome to the No Limits Leadership Podcast. We discuss ancient wisdom, real-world experiences, and the latest concepts on mastering leadership of self and others. If you're committed to maximizing your life and your impact on the world, you're home. Welcome to No Limit Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Sean Patton, and my guest today is Nicole Whittier. She's a West Point graduate, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army with over 20 years of leadership experience, and the founder and CEO of Zenith Marketing and Consulting. With a background in sports psychology and high-performance leadership, Nicole blends performance science with strategic marketing to help leaders and small businesses operate with clarity and impact. At her core, she's a builder of communities who believes leadership thrives where standards and humanity meet. Nicole, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Super excited to be on here with you.
Yeah. And also, Nicole and I went to West Point together.
Classmates.
Yeah, crazy, right? Classmates. Yeah.
I know, right?
I remember I was at the National West Point Entrepreneur Summit, big conference in Nashville. I was actually helped setting it up and working it. And you were one of the keynote speakers. And so it was really cool to sort of impromptu connect.
I know.
Not planned.
Right?
But immediately afterward, we connected and I said, man, we got to get you on the podcast because you're doing such amazing work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, that was really cool just to be able to see you and some of our other classmates. And it was a last minute trip. I think I only ended up confirming that I could attend only a couple weeks prior. So it was really, really great little mini reunion.
Wow. Well, we both have that commonality of the West Point experience, and that's such a formative time, at least it was for me, and an intense experience. I'm interested for you, what did West Point teach you about leadership that has stayed with you, that has held its ground the most over the years?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I really got so much out of West Point. It was hard. I wasn't the strongest academically. The military side was fun. Physical was a challenge, but good. And so what I really took away from there was that I could do hard things and that I had to do them with support, right? And so I leveraged a lot of different resources. Jokingly, my chemistry professor named the AI room, which for those of you who didn't go to West Point, that's like where you go and get extra office hour help. He named it after me because I spent every free minute in there. And so he used to call it the cadet minor room and got all the colorful markers for me and everything. So I really grew up just hard charging, trying to push through all problems and really was able to solve a lot of them on my own with the backing of my family. But when I got to the academy, I really had to understand that, okay, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. It means that I need to do something different and bring community in a different kind of way in order to be able to excel and reach different types of heights that I would have never been able to achieve on my own. And that's carried me through everything that I've done.
That's such a good point because, I found similarly at West Point, and I imagine if we, did a survey of all of our classmates, a lot of the people who go to a place like West Point, which, I think this can be extrapolated to other business situations, high achievers, high performers, did well in high school, but academically, I mean, I took AP classes, but I didn't really ever I wasn't striving to get like a, 4.0 or anything. And you can kind of coast on ability or talent or something like that. And then when you get there and you go to the next level or you want to go to the next level, it was the first time I was like, oh crap, like I've got to learn how to study. Like I've got to actually learn how to do the reading and I got to get help.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And how many leaders, I'm sure you've seen this too, then, as maybe in business, you're a great engineer, you're a great salesperson, you're great, whatever. And then you move into, say, leadership, or you move to the next level, you get to a point where you have to now learn the skill of asking for help. And it sounds like you kind of got that early at West Point. Was that mindset shift of it's okay to ask for help and it actually makes me stronger, not weaker? Was that easy for you, or did it kind of come naturally, or was that something that you had to kind of work through?
Yeah, no, definitely did not come naturally. And I had to work through that. And it was the support of my parents that really helped me pursue that. And look, I learned it at West Point, but I did not adopt it well for many years of my career. And so there was even a time where I was in Baghdad. And I remember I called my father and I'm like, Dad, this is the situation. I don't understand. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that out loud, but for others to learn, my mentality was, if I can do it, why can't you? And that is not fair. So he was like, okay, hold up. What are you saying? My dad's retired military and at the time was the director of the business department at University of Oklahoma. And anyways, what he continued to help coach me through was, remember when you had to ask for some help and that it was because there were things that you were good at and things that you weren't as good at? Well, everybody has those in your job as a leader, and more so just as a good human, is to figure out what people are good at and help them grow in that area, but then figure out the things that they're not good at and supplement and support and lift up. And it wasn't that I was not folks were a failure. It was just that I didn't understand that hard work looked different for every person, right? And you
Mm,
brought up like CEOs. I definitely see that in these businesses that I work with as well, is this natural belief because they are, go-getters, because they have a dream, they have this incredible vision. And so they're going out and they're doing it. And sometimes they walk away like, I should be able to do this. I should be able to go online and research and read. I should be able to leverage the tools that are out there and be successful. And sometimes they believe that the lack of conversion of a lead all the way down to a sale is an indicator of their ability to be a CEO, solopreneur, founder, whatever it is, which that's not the case, right? And so those two things, my time at West Point and learning to ask for help, my time growing in as a leader and understanding how to apply that in other situations and now working with these businesses, it really highlights that asking for help is not a matter of I can't achieve this. It's what are the supplemental resources that I need to be able to fully flourish in all the ways that I want to. And that's absolutely okay because everyone who's successful out there talks about how they made it because of person, right? No one out there says, I have achieved everything all by myself because they're probably not telling the
mhm.
truth if that's what they're saying. And we don't hear that often, anyways.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, it sounds like you had some, formative experiences. I think we all do as young lieutenants. I was
Yeah.
giving a talk at an event a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned that I don't know if there's any job in the world where someone is given as much responsibility with as little experience as a platoon leader in the army, where you show up and it's like your first job, you're 23 years old, is like, whatever, here's 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, and $20 million worth of equipment.
Right.
And by the way, people are gonna try to kill you. So go do this
Right.
thing. It's like
Yeah.
that's the first job. So it can be so overwhelming. But as you stepped into that, like, what was your mindset? Because I think a lot of people who maybe are stepping up into their first leadership role or a new level of leadership that seems big and scary and overwhelming. What was your mindset stepping in as a new leader?
Yeah, so I really, really appreciate like how you're framing this question. When I was at West Point, I leveraged an incredible resource called the Center for Enhanced Performance. And ultimately, I went back to CEP to become a sports psychology consultant for the academy. But leveraging CEP taught me ways to build confidence, reflection, relaxation, right? Like all these things that elite performers use on a day-to-day basis, and some of them subconsciously, but most of them, it's actually consciously. And right now with the competitions that are going on in Italy, there's really a good way that we can see this. So those who take a breath, those who are able to focus in the moment, let go of a bad play or a bad moment in time and get back to what they're trying to do. So when I walked into my first role, because I had worked on that so much as a cadet, I think that I came into the space nervous, absolutely, but I understood that nerves and excitement, they show up in the body the same way. And so you still get butterflies, you still get a little sweaty, right? Your heart still increases, and it's a matter of how you interpret the moment. So I was like, okay, I'm nervous, but I'm going to choose to be excited, right? And it's not that the nerves completely go away, but I'm going to interpret it as excitement because this is what I've trained for. This is what I've wanted to do. And this is what I really have asked for, since seventh grade is when I decided I want to go to West Point. So for a long time, yeah, I know I saw the commercial Now I'm in Army marketing, so, it all comes back around. But yeah, so that is what I took into it, and I had to revisit it every day. And even now when I start my meetings with my team, so I have all lieutenant colonels and majors that work for me, as well as on my business side, I start every meeting with a breath. We just take 5 seconds and we breathe. Maybe sometimes it's breathing in silence together. Maybe sometimes it's reflecting on a mantra. And I got that from CEP as a cadet and then learned that through my career, applied it in Iraq, went back to grad school to further explore it on the academic side, and then went to the academy and provided those expertise and real world experience to other future officers and just carried it forward. So that was how I felt in the moment. Nerves, but chose to be excited and really applied a lot of the skills that I had learned at West Point.
I love you're bringing this up because I think that for a lot of people, and I know I get this response from or viewpoint from a lot of people, especially people that haven't been around the military a lot, or some that have in different areas, where we'll talk about leadership, or we'll talk about performance, or we'll talk about mindset. And sort of the assumption is, maybe what they see in they've seen in the movies, like, oh, I know in the military you were just told what to do, and so like you didn't really think about it, you just executed, and like I know it's different out here, so maybe it doesn't apply. And I'm like, no, 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 that's like
Right.
this idea of authoritative, unquestioned, dominating type of quote unquote leadership, which I wouldn't even call that leadership, but that sort of mentality is what people sort of think of the military. You were at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, a military police officer.
Yeah.
And so probably even more, now you're talking police and army, like, man, that must have been,
Yeah.
so rigid. And I'm wondering, and what they're hearing from you now is like, no, it's breathing, it's elite performance, it's mindset. And you trying to meld that. Like, did you find the system accepting of that? Did you find that it was against the grain? Like, what was that
Mhm.
experience like? Because I think what people are hearing from you and what they picture when they picture combat military police officer is different. So help
Yeah.
inform them.
Yeah, right? So not what is it? Jackal and Mr. Hyde or whatever that is, right? Like silly-eyed killer in one minute, Yogi in another. You're like all things and there's like this continuum, right? So definitely originally against the grain, right?
Yeah.
Resistance. While I was a military police officer, I was deployed my first time with 3rd Brigade, 4th Infantry Division. So I had infantry soldiers, I had armor soldiers. I actually had 7 different career fields in the Army. I had Bradleys. I don't think there was any other woman in the Army at the time that had Bradleys. And we operated as a infantry platoon. And so it was a very different expectation. And so even furthermore in that environment, everybody, to include soldiers within the unit, believed that to be hard was to be, steely-eyed killer, fierce all the time. And so to introduce this kind of like what appears to be softness was challenging because it's like, whoa, hold on. You want us to slow down and breathe? No, I gotta get hyped up. And
Mm.
so at the time I didn't understand that there's a variety of elite performance. We call it like the inverted U theory. And so basically someone's peak performance looks different. So for some peak performances, it's like super energized, got to listen to that hyped up music. And then other people, they're in the library, classical music, calm, and that's where they reach their peak. I didn't understand that difference at the time, but absolutely met some resistance until we started doing it. We did it before missions. We did it when we would do our tabletop exercises before going out. Our first about 4 months, all of our missions were at night just because of the environment. And so we would take a second, we would breathe together, we would visualize together. And if you look, there's some really, really incredible videos out there about the Blue Angels and how they rehearse before they go and do a show. And they sit there and they visualize, even though they don't have the controls in their hands, they act like they have the controls, right? And they use the same tone of voice and they do all the movements. Some people, you can see them moving their hands and close their eyes. I tried to apply that. And as we did it, and as we saw the benefit of coming into space with confidence, with a little bit of stillness and with trust in our training, then when I maybe was in a rush, they were like, hold on, ma'am, we didn't breathe yet. And what's really cool is I've gotten this reputation as like the yogi but also don't mess with her. So people know that there's a little bit of both, right? And I've had the opportunity to, even now, I started a meeting briefing our CMO, who's a one-star general, and I introduced myself to these other folks that had joined the meeting. And he's like, I don't even know who you are because you didn't do our breathing exercise yet. Right. And so it's just really kind of fun to see all these other folks who are adopting and welcoming this method that it seems so in contrast to how we believe leadership shows up in the Army, which is also why it's so important, why I felt like it was so important to create Zenith Marketing Consulting, because everything that I've done, whether it's Army leadership, sports psychology, or now marketing, it's about understanding that human behavior and how do we get the most out of human behavior. And for businesses, it's the most out of human behavior to meet their business goals, whether that is the team that is delivering against those goals or those that they are trying to reach in their target audience. But that whole thread has shown up over and over in my life. And to be quite honest, Sean, it wasn't until about a year and a half ago, which again, my dad was coaching me through some different things. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the connection. Cause I was kind of in this like, who am I moment? I'm at 20 years. I got to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And I was like, ooh, I am human behavior change. That is what I'm all about. So yeah, it's kind of a long way to answer your question, but that's really how it showed up with resistance and now has continued to grow and it's expected. And I really, really love that a lot for me and my team.
That's such a great example of how the culture of any team really does start to take shape of its leadership. And that's kind of agnostic. Like that could be positive or negative. It doesn't matter, but
Yeah.
it's going to take the shape of that leader. I think another key I'm hearing from you is the consistency, right? Like you had not just here's a thing I'm going to try, but this is like part of your identity. Like part of your identity is like
Hmm.
this is who I am, this is what I'm bringing, and I'm going to show up as this person consistently, even though it was different at first. The culture shifted to you instead of you feeling like it had to knock you off and you had to pretend to be someone else in order to fit the culture
Hmm.
that was already there.
Yeah. I definitely am grateful that I've been able to come to this place in my life where I'm the most authentic version of myself in the most consistent way. And even though I started off authentic, I lost my identity over time in the Army. And I
Mm,
lost touch with, all the things I just described with so much enthusiasm. And I found myself as a major in a unit where I was trying so hard to give the team what I thought they needed and what I was being asked by the battalion commander that I was morphing myself into the non-authentic version of myself, and quite honestly, I did not succeed, right? And so while
mm,
the training was great, we had multiple units deploying and redeploying all over the world, and everybody was successful in their training. I was the operations officer, and we were complimented for the way that our operations ran. I did not make those human connections that I loved and needed so much to fulfill my purpose in life and in the Army. And I left that unit after a year's time frame, really needing to re-find myself. And I will say that while that was the hardest period of my life ever, I am grateful that I came out of it understanding that it doesn't matter if someone else is telling me, like, you being yogi, you being, they called me hippie in some cases too. I'm not really a hippie though. I'm yogi, right?
mm,
It doesn't matter if they were saying that as these derogatory means, but I had to stay true to it because when I wasn't a good leader. I wasn't a good leader for myself. I wasn't a good leader for my team. And achieving the objective is not all that it's about, right? So, like in sport and business, we talk about the results. It's also the experience along the way. Yeah, we got all the results we were looking for, but the experience was not fun. So coming into this current role, I have had to push through that discomfort, push through the, oh, here she goes again being yogi, right? And really stay true to who I am. And hey, if you don't want to breathe with me, I'm breathing. If it's my meeting, guess what? You're going to sit in the room while I breathe. And then if it's not my meeting, maybe I breathe before I come in. And so that's been helpful. But the consistency piece and kind of losing my way and coming back to it has been important. And I'll
mm,
just close this part here by saying I feel the most true in who I am that I probably felt my whole entire adult life. And because I've gone through all these different moments, I know what's important for me. I know where my identity intersects. I know where my values lie. And I also understand that when things are not within those bubbles, that am more comfortable saying, ooh, because I know what's in the bubbles, I can choose to move out of that space, right? Whether it's an interaction, whether it's a business decision, a relationship. And so I feel confident and good in my day to day because of being authentically me in all the quirky ways that I am me.
And there's so much goodness there that I want to dive into. So first is what was happening? What was an experience like, if you don't mind, like going back to like that kind of threw you off? Because it sounds like you had some initial success sort of being yourself in this first role. You got to this other role and sort of lost touch with that. What do you attribute that both externally and internally to?
Yeah. So the first role was obviously right after graduating from the academy. I'm a lieutenant. I ended up promoting to captain while in Iraq and then did a number of other roles. And so this job that I was describing was in Colorado. And there was a couple things going on. This was after I'd been teaching at West Point. It was after I had my degree in sports psychology. And I will say I was fortunate enough where 90% of my career, was deemed a successful officer, usually rated 1 or 2, within my peer group, had a lot of support, had leaders working hard to help ensure that my career was going in a way to allow me to have a high level of success in the Army. And even getting back to Colorado, I was by name requested by the division there to go serve on the staff. Had a lot of success, really enjoyed it. But then it was my time to move back into a different kind of unit. And I said at the beginning, I was in a division. I have spent 90% of my time in the Army in divisional units. I feel comfortable there. I thrive there. I moved to a divisional unit, a military police unit. What started happening was there was a really, really strong subculture within the unit there that was not healthy. And myself and a classmate of ours, actually, we were such a good team. We were charged with helping to write the course of this subculture. And in doing that, there were actions that needed to be taken in order for us to bring accountability back into the battalion and as well as create processes that maybe didn't quite exist to the same degree. And we were charged to do that. I think that how I ended up losing my way is because I did not stand firm in my true identity when I was being challenged by my boss to show up differently. And I had found myself really like having so much success. And for the first time in a very long time, back to my cadet days where I needed a lot of help, I was one of 2 majors and this was a military police unit. So we were over 500 individuals. And I was the first woman operations officer in that unit and just really was met with so much resistance and I didn't have the support of my leadership. And instead of me still staying true to me, I was like, okay, how do I, for lack of a better term, how do I win? Right? How do I get to where they want me to be? And I kept trying to twist myself and twist myself and twist myself. And it didn't work. And what it turned out, and I share this openly, turned out where I was investigated for 9 months. And basically, the Army said, hey, we're not sure that you're fit to even be in the Army through this investigation. Now, as the investigation came out, everything was cleared. It came to light that there was a group of soldiers that actually colluded. And I have a letter from a joint officer noting this to make sure that, my file continues to stay clear. They colluded against me and my classmate, but in particular me, in order to maintain their autonomy that they felt like we were trying to take away as we worked against these subcultures. And it was, again, not a great experience at all. Didn't have the true support of my leader, even though he was charging us to take these actions. But my classmate and I, we withstood it together. And thank goodness it was my classmate, our classmate. And really, I got through it all because of having him as a partner, as a supporter, and being able to leverage my community. I'll just also add, I talked about when I was a cadet and going through so many challenges and having to learn this lesson of needing to bring community in. In this moment in Colorado, I had so much shame because I'd been so successful that I didn't lean on my community, right? I went inward. My classmate and I supported each other, but I didn't tell a lot of people. And then eventually I couldn't do it alone anymore. And so I started to tell folks what were going on. And the outpouring of love and support and humanity that showed up for me is the reason why I made it through. I had a friend who got on a flight 2 days later and showed up at my house and was like, I'm going to be at your house for as long as I need to be at your house because we're going to fight through this together, right? I had people showing up from a community not even tied to the military, showing up with like food and just coming, hey, we're just going to sit with you today. Because I know going to work every day with this going on must be really, really hard. And in that experience, that started to heal. And I continue to heal from that whole moment. But yeah, it was definitely really, really hard. And the challenge, I did not approach it in a way that now looking back that I wish that I had. I will say if I had been authentically me, I probably would have failed at the mission though, to be honest, right? And so I chose to try to morph and twist. And the mission was to prepare. We had about 3 units getting ready to deploy and 2 coming home. And then we had military working dog teams that were also deploying in small teams. So to prepare them, I wouldn't have been able to prepare them as well if I had been authentically me, because I think my leadership would have felt that I was not being the style of leader that they were wanting me to be and accustomed to having in the Army.
So as you look back at that formative experience, it sounds like there's some key lessons around uh, community and making sure you're surrounding yourself with a strong support system, and the whole proximity principle, right? Being very careful about building those relationships and those community around you. For you as an individual and you as a leader, what would you say was your biggest lesson learned from that experience that you carry forward?
Yeah, trust your gut. I went to one of my mentors who happened to be a pretty significant leader in the division. And I went to him and I said, I don't know what it is, but something doesn't feel right. And I felt like something was brewing, but I couldn't describe it and name it. So I didn't know how to ask for help. I just said, hey, sir, something's happening. I don't know exactly what it is, but it doesn't feel right. And he was like, okay. And then after that, I was like, okay, because I can't name it clearly, I kind of just kept putting it to the side, like, nah, you know what, Nicole, you're probably being too sensitive. I've been told I've been too sensitive many, many times in my career. You're probably being too sensitive. It's probably not as serious as you think it is. Just get in there and lock in and do what you're supposed to do. And I think in that month period, I should have continued to sought support. I told my mentor early on, but I didn't go back to him and say, okay, sir, what do I do? I don't know what it is. What do I do? Here are some of the things that I'm seeing. Because I guarantee that if I would have told him the things that I was seeing versus trying to like label it, he would have been able to help me label it. He checked in with me and you know what I said? Oh, I'm good, sir. I'm good. Everything's good. Right. And I just said that over and over and over again. He even showed up at my battalion a couple times just to pop in and how's everything going? Sir, it's amazing. Love it. Oh, so grateful for this job, right? Because I was grateful. And it's what I'd asked for. Like to be an operations officer is absolutely what I wanted to do. But yeah, trusting my gut was probably the biggest thing. And then close second is you're not a good fit for every organization. And in the Army, we don't always get to choose our organization, but we have a little bit more control than we realize. And I also believe that if I had acknowledged that I wasn't a good fit for that organization and had been honest again with my mentor who was in a position to also impact that, something different probably could have happened, right? It was like, okay, you're not a good fit for this organization. Here's what we can do. And sometimes what we do is you're not a good fit. Here's how you navigate to give the best, but we're all going to acknowledge that you're not a good fit. And then we'll figure out what's next for you. And instead I was, square peg in a round hole trying to make it work. And yeah, it did not. And the cost of it was, again, like my own confidence in my identity, as well as building relationships with junior officers and leading them in a way that they deserve to be led.
I resonate so much with this idea of not listening to your gut, of not trusting sort of the wisdom inside you as instinct. And I think for me as a young leader, that was a weakness as well, maybe coming out of West Point and then as an infantry and then special forces. Of the answer was when things were hard, it was like it wasn't to question or research or like look into it. It was just like go harder, right? It's just like
Mm,
harden up, keep marching. The mission's gonna end, the sun's gonna come up, you're gonna redeploy, whatever. It was just like suck it up and go harder was always the
yeah.
answer. And you override that intuition. And when you're describing it, this sort of, I'm going to call it strategic, like personal strategic level, like big level identity. I've had that happen where I've, over intellectualized, right? Like we can get in our head and be like, well, I can solve this problem. So I can outthink this problem and I can overcome this thing and go against it. And I have this cognitive dissonance between what my sort of like intuition is saying and what my head's saying. And then, but I will say too, I've had to learn this lesson over and over again as well. So hopefully people are resonating with this. Like even at a tactical level, even in the military, like every time on deployment where I had this intuition about something and I was like, no, it's not that. You can go through it. Something bad happened, and
Mm-hmm.
luckily
Mm-hmm.
I never lost soldiers, but the times I got closest to losing a soldier was me not listening to my intuition in combat. And the time in business where I went through a bankruptcy and sort of like lost everything and got in debt, did all these things, was because I was just trying to grind through and not listening and not trusting instinct and not bringing in resource. And in my case, I don't know if this is the same for you, but what I've come to is I've sort of come more self-actualized now later in life and done the work is it was really this fear of being seen as a failure
Mm-hmm.
both by others and myself. Like that was like
Mm-hmm.
worse than death. And so it was like
Yeah.
anything to not look like a failure, even if that means continuing to go down the wrong path, even if that means to continue to lead the wrong way. It was
Yeah.
just like delay. And and it has taken a lot of work to get to a place where my relationship with failure and my own identity is strong enough to not get persuaded that way. I don't know if that resonates with what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And I think it speaks so true to where I'm at now, right? Like I have learned to say feedback. It's just feedback. I tell myself all the time. And I get to decide what I do with it, right? Like I can be emotional about it. And because I was born in the month of July, 4th of July, all American girl here, I am a crier. But I can decide what I do with it, right? It's feedback. Say, you know what, Nicole, you can be in your feelings. You have 30 minutes. I set my timer. I do this with all of my high performing individuals too, right? Like I worked with a lot of D1, worked with a couple pro athletes and a few Olympic athletes. And with all of them, hey, you get to decide what you want to do with the feedback. And if you want to sit in it for a minute, that's okay too, because we don't need to ignore our feelings. That goes with trusting our instinct, right? So let's set a timer. You get 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Hey, if you're in the middle of a game, you get half a second. And then when you go after the game, you can sit with a little bit more if you need to, but sometimes you don't need to, depending on what the situation was. And so that absolutely resonates. And so that helped me reframe failure. That helped me reframe the significance in terms of what it meant for me as like a contributor to society. I have my whole life, it's been so important for me to be a good human. And I know most people are like, yeah, we all want to be good humans, but I put so much pressure on myself to try to like do the right thing, be a good human. There's right or wrong. Well, no, there's right, there's more right, there's less right, or there's this or that because you can't judge either. Because with every situation, the environment sometimes dictates the response. And so with myself, I am more forgiving. I'm more kind. I take the feedback. I choose to do something with it. And sometimes I'm like, psh, pound sand feedback. I don't care. like, cool, not listening. And it's not necessarily like my instinct. It's like somebody else, will say something. And then other times I'm like, you know what? That is really, really important. I'm not in a space to process and hear it right now. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to come back to it. Or, hey, I can actually sit with this right in this moment. And again, all of my top performing athletes do this and do it really well. And that's why it was so important to make that connection between elite performance, between the army, and between business, because that thread pulls all the way through. Gut instinct is a portion of our decision making data point, and then you complement that with other data. You have to figure out for yourself what other data is key. As a marketer, I think that there's some data in marketing that we must use. You can't operate solely off of gut instinct. However, at the end of the day, you know where you're trying to drive your business, you know what you're trying to do, and you also get to assume whatever risk you want for your business, right? So again, thank you for your feedback. And people tell me that all the time that I'm working with. Cool, I love the feedback, Nicole, but I'm not going to do that. I'm like, all right, no problem. Here's what we're going to do that's going to meet you where you are, and that's absolutely okay. And the person that does it the most is my sister, who I work with on her business, by the way. She's always like, cool, we're not doing that, Nicole, but thanks.
So, yeah, that's why I'm really interested in your background in sports psychology and performance, and when it comes to leadership and how you integrate these. What I'm hearing is that I heard a lot of things, two major things there in terms of lessons or ideas to pass on to leaders now who want to increase their performance. One was the emotions and, processing and feeling those, I'm a big follower of conscious leadership. And one of those key instincts in there is, feel your emotions all the way through. If you actually just let, emotions are energy and motion, you just let them actually sit in them. Don't try to suppress them. Obviously, if you're in the right environment, about 90 seconds, they're gone. And then you can more
Right.
objectively look at like, all right, what is the wisdom? What's the lesson behind that? So I heard that. I also heard the feedback, like seeing things as welcoming feedback. Feedback is how we get better. Give it, take it, and then we get to choose what we do with it. I heard that as two. What other, one, two, three, whatever, uh, nuggets that you've seen from your expertise in performance psychology would you say leaders could embrace as a tool moving forward?
Yeah, one that we talked about earlier is consistency, right? So being consistent in your practice of the things that help you self-regulate. And so what that could look like is the breath, whether it's every day, whether it's before walking into a meeting. It could look like something like squeezing your fist and then relaxing them, right? There's all these different ways that I like to use the threshold of a door as my indicator when I'm walking into a meeting. So before I cross into a threshold, I quick body scan, and I have to do it every single time, because if I body scan one day and then body scan 30 days later, then I don't truly know how my body is telling me feedback in terms of how I'm likely to perform and interact with those around me. And so that consistency is so important. You will learn what your body is telling you. That mind body connection is so, so important. And so you'll learn that, and that'll allow you to be a more instinctual leader. That'll allow you to trust your gut, because you're going to know what your gut is telling you. That's going to allow you to self-regulate. And there's so many things. So consistency is definitely a large one. The other is understanding. I learned this from my mentor, Dr. Ken Ravizza, at Cal State Fullerton. He talked about, I think he had 5 R's. I've reduced it down to 3. So there's 3 R's, and it is release, regroup, refocus, right? And so with these 3 R's, to know what you need to release, regroup, refocus, you need to understand how your body interacts with certain things. So if I'm thinking of like, what are my signal lights? Something that is a green light, it's like when you're in the zone, everything's going really well, right? Right. In the zone. Hey, I grew up playing softball. I am hitting that ball over the fence. And as a catcher, a pitcher, like all these things, right? In the zone. Then there's like the yellow light. Ooh, I was one of those people that I liked high and outside pitches. So if I saw a high and outside pitch and I didn't swing at it, that's a yellow light for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I beat myself up. Or use the 3 R's: release, regroup, refocus. Red light is, for me at the time, red light was striking out and crap hits the fan. And that's a red light. And that is a full stop, keeps you from achieving whatever performance is that you're trying to achieve. I'm using sport for the example. So striking out. So knowing what those are. So I have multiple times written down what are my yellow and red lights. And then I apply the 3 R's: release, regroup, refocus. That is when I get 15 minutes to talk to any individual of any type of performance or teams. I work with a team in Jersey, a wrestling team. If there's 15 minutes, that is the number one thing that I always tell them. I teach yoga in Cook County Jail. I start every yoga class talking about release, regroup, refocus. So refocus is my mantra, and then being able to just go in and do whatever I need to do. So release, regroup, refocus. That is it. Those are the things.
Those are all so important. And what I love what you're talking about here really is taking performance and leadership to the next level. And it's really, to me, showing the respect and reverence for the role of leader. And I think those are the type of people who listen to this podcast, know them leadership. That's the people in the audience are the people who are taking this leadership role seriously. Leadership, and also recognizing that leadership starts with self. Like how we lead ourselves, we can't lead others better than we lead,
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And so I think that like everything you said is great in how you implement it. And I hope sort of the meta that people are taking from this conversation is treating yourself like that elite athlete, like your performance, because this matters. Like if athletes are doing that to score points in an imaginary game to get a piece of metal, doesn't this matter in how you show up for your family? Like, doesn't this
Yes.
matter in how you show up for your team? Doesn't this matter how you show up for the world? And if it does matter, are we treating it with the same discipline and respect and focus that you're talking about, and tactics? Are we trying these things and getting better at leading ourselves daily so that we can show up in those other roles that are so critical because it's life?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the summary that you just gave was so spot on in terms of it's how do we show up as a leader of ourselves to be able to better lead other individuals and play the role that we're supposed to play in whatever team or business that we're part of, and play it well, right? And also enjoy it. That's the fifth thing. We said four. The last one is have fun. Have fun, have fun, have
Yes.
fun, right? Like life is important. There's so many key things are happening, but also having fun along the way is so critical, because in the moments that it's not as fun, you'll still have those fun moments that you can lean back on. For me, it continues to propel me forward. So yeah, I love it.
And this has been awesome, Nicole. We got through all of that. There's like so much goodness and depth to this. And we didn't even talk marketing, which is crazy. So we may have to have you back on to talk marketing, because just as a marketing expert, but I think people can see how applying this and the mindset performance and human behavior specialist to marketing is so critical. So thanks for this. Thanks for the work you do. And when people do want to find out and research and connect with you about what you can do for them on the marketing consulting side, where should they go?
Yeah, so a good way to kind of see some of the things that I'm doing right now is on LinkedIn, just Nicole Miner Whittier. That's a great, great place to find me at. I would say start there. I do have my website, but I would say go to LinkedIn, because I have a nonprofit side that I always like folks to check out first. It's called Ask a Marketer. It is with a couple other marketing consultants out there. And we do LinkedIn Lives and we answer all the questions that you have. And we're trying to bring marketing out there. So that's really where I would want to drive individuals. We actually have our next one coming up. We try to do them every other month. So go to LinkedIn, look out for our LinkedIn Live. And if you are interested in more, you can connect with me there and see a little bit more about, what we have to offer, and also in terms of sports psychology. So I work with, like I said, even though I'm in marketing, everything I do is about changing human behavior. I still work with a number of athletes, teams, and professionals out there on the sports psychology side. I'm really excited to say this wrestling team that I'm working with, they're having their best season yet. So I'm super, super happy for them, because I made them all be platoon leaders and go on a virtual mission. So yes, that's where I would say to go, and look forward to connecting in any way that folks are interested in, working together.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Nicole.
Thank you. It's great fun.
Thanks for being a part of the No Limit Leadership family. This isn't just a podcast. We're building a movement of no limit leaders driven to unlock our greatness and lead the world forward. If this made you think or gave you something useful, please, 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 right now, go hit follow and then share it with one leader you believe in. Challenge limits, develop leaders, fuel greatness.